Awesome. You guys can hear me. So more people are joining. Happy Saturday. So I hope you're all having a good weekend so far. It's so nice and sunny outside. Hi, Apple. I introduced myself last week, and I think all of you were here last week, or you already know me. If anybody new has joined, then my name is Keeva. I'm from Ireland, and I'm one of the professors at CUFS. So last week we were talking about the movie Parasite, and I introduced some vocabulary and we had some discussion questions about Parasite. And today we are going to be talking about what the rest of the world is talking about, which is coronavirus. So quite a serious topic, but really important. And I'm going to be introducing some different expressions and things that you can use when you're talking about the virus in English. And it will also help if you're reading English news, because there are some complicated terms that you may not be aware of. And many of these we use in medicine, but we can also use in our day-to-day life as well. So for today's class, first of all, I'm going to be explaining the different names that we use when we are talking about the virus. After that, just like last week, I'm going to introduce some vocabulary. So I will give you guys 10 sentences, and there will be a gap in each sentence, and you will need to try to complete the sentence using the term that you think is appropriate, and I'll be giving you some feedback about it. After that, we will just give you guys some expressions that we can use when we are asking for advice and giving advice. And we're going to have a little competition. Hi, Irene, good afternoon. We're going to have a little competition in terms of giving advice. So it's going to be a lot of fun today. So let's get started on how we actually name the virus. So there are a couple of different names that we commonly use for it. So some people can get a little bit confused, like, should we call it coronavirus? Do we call it COVID? So it's kind of difficult to know. And these are medical terms, and I think my mom is watching and she's a doctor, so I don't want to embarrass her. So I've done a lot of research about this. So hopefully all the information that I give you should be very accurate. So to start off with, coronavirus, we often refer to this virus as coronavirus, which is not technically correct, because the coronavirus is actually a family of viruses. It's a more general term. So a coronavirus is a family of viruses, usually that are spread from Apple. Are you my mom? You were my dad last week, so I'm getting really confused. So coronaviruses are a family of viruses, usually that spread from animals to people. They're transmitted between the two. And the common thing with coronaviruses are that they affect your breathing. So some examples of coronaviruses, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, are SARS and MERS. So these are ones I know that particularly affected Korea. So just to copy and paste the definition. So coronaviruses is a family of illnesses, usually causing breathing problems. So when you think of SARS and MERS, yeah, the flu can be considered a coronavirus, Joseph. Yeah, for sure. So sometimes they are less serious, like the flu, and sometimes they are more serious. So with SARS and MERS, the R stands for respiratory, difficult spelling, respiratory. So respiratory means related to breathing. So that's where we get the R from in both SARS and MERS, because the coronavirus relates to breathing. So I'm going to ask you guys a trivia question. I will be very impressed if anybody knows the answer. So like a lot of medical terms, the word corona actually comes from ancient Latin. So it's not an English term, it comes from the ancient Latin language. So what does corona mean in English? I will be very impressed if you know the answer. Hi, Han. So I'll give you guys 20 seconds to write down the answer. No cheating. What does the word corona mean in English? It comes from Latin. Oh, Keebyong, you're too smart. Keebyong is the winner. So corona means crown, okay? So because the virus, when viewed under a microscope, looks like a crown shape. Very good, Irene. Oh, I thought that question was difficult. So that is why we use the word corona. And I'm sure you guys all know Corona beer. So Corona is also used in Spanish because a lot of Spanish also comes from Latin. So Corona, I think on the Corona bottle, there is a crown. I don't usually drink Corona beer, but it also comes from, again, the word crown. Okay, hi everyone. So now that we've established what coronavirus means, so COVID-19 is the specific strain of the virus. So corona is more general. COVID-19 is the specific virus that we're dealing with at the moment. So the co comes from corona, VI comes from virus, D is disease, and hi Joy, and 19 is the year that the first case of COVID-19 came about. So usually when we talk about it in English, just chatting about it, we'll say coronavirus, but technically the correct term is COVID-19. So usually when you're reading newspapers and things, they will actually use the correct term COVID-19. But I think it sounds like really scientific. When I use this term, it almost feels like it's Armageddon, like using this kind of scientific term. So I think most people in English just prefer to call it coronavirus. Okay, so in the West, there's actually been like quite a lot of controversy about this. You may be aware because certain politicians have been referring to the virus as the Chinese virus. So I know that in Korea, there's a translation that some people use, which is like Wuhan virus. But the reason this has been quite controversial in the West is because it's causing a lot of people to blame China. And as a result, unfortunately, there are some like racist attacks and things, which is very sad and scary. But a lot of people are blaming politicians who are not using the term coronavirus, yet Wuhan pneumonia. So just the spelling of pneumonia is so difficult. So we have the silent P. So yeah, some people call it Wuhan pneumonia, I guess, the direct translation from Korean to English. But in English, we're trying to avoid calling it the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus because it can unfortunately lead to people blaming China and also a lot of political problems. Okay, so let's get started on some vocabulary. So if you joined last week, then you're going to be familiar with the structure of this. So I'm just going to say a sentence and also paste the sentence into the comments. And you guys should try to complete the sentence using the correct word. So Trump, did say Wuhan virus, Chinook, but I believe he also was tweeting about the Chinese virus. I saw something online. So my first sentence is coronavirus has become a global. So if you have seen the advertising for this class, then you've probably spotted this word. So there are a few different words that we can put in there, but the WHO, the World Health Organization, has given a specific term to this global. So I'm hoping that you guys can complete the sentence with the word that I am thinking of. Pandemic, are you right? Let's see what everyone else thinks. Pandemic. You guys are too smart. Okay, so yes, the answer is pandemic. So I think in our lifetime, this is the first time we have seen a pandemic. Because at the beginning, it was described as an epidemic. Okay, very good, Anna, also. So an epidemic is any problem that has gotten out of control. So, for example, a disease that spreads a lot in a big group usually within a country or to a large area of the population. But then, pandemic. So originally it was an epidemic. It was considered an epidemic, but because of the scale of it, then the WHO kind of upped its status to what we refer to as a pandemic. So a pandemic is more serious than an epidemic. A pandemic is a disease that affects a whole country or the entire world. So I guess with SARS, for example, it affected quite a few countries, but not on such a large global scale. So it would have been considered an epidemic, but coronavirus or COVID-19 is considered to be a pandemic. Okay, very good. So a lot of you guys got that one correct. Okay, this one is pretty simple, pretty easy, I think. Okay, so number 2, the of coronavirus include a fever, fatigue, so tiredness, and a cough. So these are some of the of coronavirus. So please post your answers. Yeah, Apple, that's very true. No one really knows like what the magnitude will be. So unfortunately, my family right now are in the UK and it's spreading very, very, very quickly. And unfortunately, they don't have the resources there that we have in Korea. So it's very worrying. You guys are just too smart for this. Okay, very good. So symptoms are signs of an illness. So if you go to the doctor, you might say, my symptoms are, okay? So who can tell me some symptoms? If I have the cold, what kind of symptoms will I have if I have the cold? So maybe post some ideas. Yep, and just the spelling of symptoms there, guys, there's a P. So symptoms, but the P is kind of silent, we say symptoms. Okay, so fever, I think if you have the cold, the common cold, usually we don't have a fever. Again, my mom is watching, so she might be very angry with me if I'm embarrassing her because she's a doctor. But fever, okay, so if the cold is quite serious, I think that's more flu. Like flu would be muscle ache, fevers, like the influenza, the flu. So cold, definitely. A runny nose, a cough. Sore throat, very good. Apple's identity is changing a lot there because she was my father and now she's my mother. Okay, so sore throat, very good. What about, okay, this is something that I'm very curious about because the symptoms seem to be a little bit different for Koreans and Westerners. Can I say chill? I've been drinking too much wine or makgeolli last night. What are my symptoms of a hangover? So hopefully none of you guys are hungover right now. It is Saturday morning, so some of you may be. But what are the symptoms of a hangover? English only, please, Apple. Headache, dizziness, dry mouth. Okay, good. Because I was quite confused because when I first came to Korea and I was teaching college students, I often had to go to MT, which is, there's a lot of soju involved. So it was awful and scary for me. But after MT, my Korean coworker would always say, how is your stomach? And I would be quite confused because she associated a hangover with a sore stomach. Whereas in the West, we would always say, how's your head? We would never ask about someone's stomach when they're hungover, how's your head? So, okay, so interesting. So vomiting, if it's extreme, okay, nausea, headache, dry mouth, very good. Okay, so you all understand symptoms. So the third one, sentence number 3, please fill in the gap. Most people from the disease without any special medical treatment. So particularly younger people or most of the population, if they have no underlying illnesses, usually they from the disease without needing any special kind of medicine or treatment. They suffer from the disease. The majority of people, if they stay at home, they will suffer, but eventually after about a week or so, they will, even without any special medical treatment. So Helen says recover. Very good. So most people will, if they are, so most people, so this is present tense heyan, so just most people recover from the disease. They get better. Okay, Get over, so Kishik, we can say get over, but we can't say get over from. We can say get over the disease. We don't use the preposition from. So the word from there is key, because usually we say recover from. So we can say most people get over the disease, most people recover from the disease. Okay. Okay, very good. Next one. So people with, how about resist? So Joseph, if you resist the disease, you don't get it. And you also can't say resist from, okay? COVID-19 virus can be transmitted in areas with hot and humid climates. Yeah, there is a myth that humidity kills it, but yeah, according to the WHO, it can still be spread even in hot areas. So the next sentence is people with other medical conditions such as asthma and diabetes may be more dangerous. You can't really describe a person as dangerous in this situation. Okay, one person has got the answer that I'm looking for. So if you are more easily hurt in this situation, you may be more vulnerable. Very good. So the best way to complete this sentence is people with other medical conditions such as asthma and diabetes may be more critical is also good. Cautious, I think in this situation we would say should be more cautious. We would use a stronger sentence. Helen, fatal, may be more fatal. We would say may have more chance of having a fatality. So you can't say may be more fatal because fatal means dead. You can't be more or less fatal. So we would say in this situation may be more vulnerable. So vulnerable is an adjective that means you are able to be easily hurt. Susceptible, oh, that's a good one as well, Hanal. You can also say susceptible. Oh, that's a difficult word to say. So you can use both of those. Usually we say vulnerable. So vulnerable is a term that means easily hurt, but it's not only just used in medical terms. So maybe you have had like a heartbreak recently and you feel a little bit vulnerable. You feel like you are easily hurt. You can also say in this situation that you are vulnerable. So it's kind of a feeling, but we often use it when we are talking about diseases or illnesses. So older people will be more easily hurt. They are more vulnerable. People with diabetes and asthma are also more vulnerable. So if you have not heard of the diseases asthma and diabetes before, I'll just explain those quickly. So asthma is a disease which is relatively common, and it means that the people who suffer from asthma have difficulty breathing. So usually they need to use an inhaler to help them with their breathing. And diabetes is a disease where someone's blood sugar levels, their insulin is too high. So they need to counteract that with injections and things. Okay, very good. So vulnerable.